Hi, my name's Grant Seabourne. I'm a certified financial planner and certified trust and fiduciary advisor with First Financial Trust.
And I'm Grant Cunningham. The grants might get confusing there. Sorry about that. But I am also a trust officer with First Financial Trust and a CTFA and an attorney.
One of the more common questions that we get working for a trust company is, do I need a trust? And I think, a good starting point as a response to that question is, well, what goals are you trying to accomplish? So there are many different tools and vehicles that you can use in developing a good estate plan, but we always try to trace those vehicles back to the starting goal of what you're trying to accomplish. And of course, we always advise, as you're building an estate plan, to work with a qualified attorney, CPA, in addition to your trust officer or financial advisor. So, Grant, today we're talking about estate planning. Oftentimes one of the, first steps and maybe most important steps is just establishing or updating your last will and testament. Can you go over some of the reasons it's important to put a will in place and keep it updated?
Absolutely. So, I would say the first and most important reason for doing that is to make sure that your assets pass the way you intend for them to. So you sometimes will hear this word intestacy, or somebody died intestate, and that just means that they died without a will. And in Texas, we have a system, a statutory system for how those assets pass to heirs without a will. A lot of people don't understand that system, or even if they do, it may not be the way they want their assets to pass. And so I think the biggest reason to do the will is just to make sure that the assets you have at the time of your death are actually going to the people you intend for them to go to.
Yeah, that's great. And in addition, appointing the executor of your choosing. If not, the court could appoint someone who you would not have necessarily chosen had you had the forethought to put that in place in advance.
Yeah, that's right. It's important to have a trusted person as executor, somebody that you know is going to do what you intend, follow the terms of the will. And sometimes that can be a corporate executor, a corporate trustee's executor. So, for instance, First Financial Trust is a corporate trustee under Texas law. And so you could even appoint somebody like First Financial Trust, where they have a fiduciary obligation to make sure that you're doing exactly what you wanted in your will.
And that fiduciary obligation is huge, is very important. I think too, another less thought about benefit of establishing a will, well in advance, especially for, younger people who tend not to see the importance of having a will in place, is appointing guardians for your children. You can make that as complicated as you want, adding in, testamentary trusts, which we'll talk about later, for your children. But at the very least, you can appoint who you would want to be guardian of their person, when you pass away.
Yeah, and oftentimes, as you mentioned, for younger people with kids, that's to them one of the most important features. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and some of these more complex tools that we'll get into today, we'll talk about step up in basis, which is simply, where the cost basis of your investment assets are stepped up to the current market value on your date of death, which is a huge tax benefit. When assets flow through probate and flow through your will, you do not lose the cost basis, you do not lose the step up in basis as you do with some of these other vehicles that we'll talk about.
One other thing that I think is important when talking about wills in Texas is we're often asked about avoiding probate, which is the process of when you die, your will is taken to court, it's proved up and granted validity, I guess you could say, and then you start the administration of the estate. And probate is kind of a four-letter word for people. They really get worried about it, and it's true that in other states it's really difficult and time-consuming. There's lots of court supervision. Fortunately, in Texas, it's one of the easiest states to probate, and so I think that's just worth mentioning when we're talking about wills. It's not as scary and difficult of a process as it might be otherwise in another state. In Texas, it really is a pretty straightforward process.
Yeah, it's that is a benefit. And talking about complexity of probate, part of that the estate administration process, circling back to one of your earlier points, you're required to file tax returns, after someone passes. Both their personal tax return and the estate tax return itself. If it's a taxable estate, which we'll get into later, you have to file Form 706. So Circling back to your point on the benefits of a corporate executor, someone who can take care of all those things in a prudent manner, in addition to custody, maintaining custody of the investments in a prudent fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most individuals who are appointed as executor probably have not done that before, and so it's going to be their first time. A corporate executor has done that many times. That's their bread and butter. That's what they know, and so I think that specialization and expertise can be a huge benefit.
Well, that's great. Well, I think we about summed up the last will and testament.